Wrong button. Well, welcome to this episode of Sooner Legends Podcast. I'm your host, Mike the Legend, and if you don't mind, wipe your feet, hit that red subscriber button, hit the like, hit the comment. Be sure you ring that post notification bell. That way you won't miss like when I got my guy Bomber on, and so we're gonna be talking about the NIL. Uh, the collective and all of that because the legend is from the days of the grease palms, and Bomber is going to help me with all of my NIL woes. Bomber, welcome to Sooner Legends Podcast, my brother.
Hey man, I've been waiting for my invite. This is great. I think you have a great show, and I hope people are tuning in. If you're watching this for the first time, make sure you subscribe. Get this man some pubs so we can get out there and get more product for everybody in Sooner orbit. I think that's been really great, and I appreciate you inviting me on. I'll help you as much as I can, Matt.
Okay, Bomber. Here's the thing that the old legend. We're going to prove today that you can teach old dog new tricks. So
Okay.
let's start with the NIL. Like I told you in the green room, when you and Jason or anybody else like that is talking about the NIL, I'm like the young man in the corner with the cone hat that says dunce.
Right. Okay. You're not the
So,
only one.
let's start with the NIL. I know the basics. It's name, image, and likeness. So
Right.
what does that do for the recruit or the foot or the player, no matter if it's football or in basketball? What does that do for the player?
So let's clear up a couple things. We want to make sure we get the naming right. NIL, name, image, and likeness, was supposed to be a trade for services. You go do a advertisement for Bo and Jim's Automotive, right? You go
Okay.
and record a 30-minute spot, and in return they would pay you a lump sum, or maybe they give you a commission, something like that, to get money to the athlete. Really, should have been getting paid all along. Fact that athletes were used and abused for 50 years, really the modern age of football, and not getting paid for it, you and I both believe was wrong. So that's where name, image, and likeness came in. It really kicked in 2021, so it's only a few years old,
Mm,
and it was uh, an unnamed way to pay students so that they would come to your team, and
okay.
they would be different amounts for different players. Personalities will get paid more than maybe necessarily people that just show up and do their work. But it was supposed to be from a third party, not coming from the university, and was going directly to the player.
Okay.
The House settlement that came out last year, I don't know if people are familiar with that, but House versus NCAA basically said, okay, never mind about the third party payment, which is what we just discussed. The university can now pay students
Oh,
up to, and the universities can fund that up to 20.5 million. So there's two funds. There's the university version, and each university has to, they'll decide how much money they want to put to NIL and how to distribute that money. And that money and that reporting goes back to the NCAA. For you to stay legal, you would need to only spend up to 20.5 million. Any other money that they get from a third party, NIL, would come from your advertisers and everything else,
yeah.
essentially to just help them sell their products. Now, NIL's devolved and sort of broken up, and it's become literally a pay for play. The old way that during the 70s and 80s and early 90s, everybody knew was getting paid. Eric Dickerson, for instance, we'll just use one example, getting buckets of cash and a Corvette and flashy jewelry, other things. But they show up, they run the ball down the field, and the team wins.
Right.
But there were always arbitrary, and they were completely arbitrary rules enforcement that would come in. The NCAA would put the hammer down, like USC with Reggie Bush, because they broke those rules. Now with the house settlement, technically, they can be paid both by the university and by the third party.
Okay. See, what I kind of did this. I'm wearing the Danny Stutzman T-shirt that the year they beat Texas, and he had. So this would be an example of name, image, and likeness, right? He had this image.
It would be. Yeah,
that put on his T-shirt, and he sold this for a sum.
that's right.
And so does that also fall into the category of some of these college players having their own podcasts on YouTube and stuff like that?
No, that's something completely different. Now players can go out and have jobs as well.
Mm.
So they can have their own podcast, earn their own money, and there's no penalty for that. There's no cap it counts against. These players basically are working for themselves, and whatever they get from that, they get to keep. So these are three different funding sources: one from the school, one by themselves, and one by a third party, that now players can make all these buckets of cash that we've heard thrown around. 6 million for one player, 12 million for an incoming freshman 5-star quarterback to Michigan. I mean, that's crazy money, right? But that's where we're at right now. Is it's the Wild West.
Yeah, one thing that when they started the NIL, one thing that I've always had pictured, and is when Plymouth in the mid '60s introduced the Plymouth Roadrunner, and they used the actual Roadrunner from Bugs Bunny
Uh-huh.
and the beep beep horn. They had to pay, I think Plymouth or Chrysler Corporation had to pay over $1 million at that time for that name, image, and likeness for
Okay.
Plymouth. So that's how I kind of started to understand it. And then when, like you said, when everything went to the Supreme or into whatever Congress, whatever, the that's when my head exploded. And I'm like,
Right.
what in the world is?
Well, and if you really want to have your head explode, this is something that your viewers should know. The House settlement hasn't been signed off on. It's been negotiated, but the judge hasn't signed it.
Mm,
And there are some outstanding lawsuits from some small schools, small conferences, other interested parties, some players that maybe want to unionize that could either sue now to try to stop ratification, or once it's signed off on by the judge, then lawsuits will come in to charge against that, because there's some things in the House settlement that are punitive to smaller conferences and schools. So
right.
who knows if this thing ever gets fully implemented. I said once it was announced last April, or I think was the month, or March, I said at that time, I put a tweet out that I basically told everybody, this is all well and good, but I find it hard to believe that this entire settlement as written will be ratified. I think the judge might sign it, but I think there's parts of it that will never be implemented.
Um, Speaking of, I'm gonna kind of go off topic. I got a subscriber. His name is Garrett Bulware,
Uh-huh.
and how I'm new to this too, into podcasting. Where does Garrett need to go to find my membership link? Because I can have members now.
Oh, yeah, if you could do that on your website, let me look. Let me check your site out.
I,
So,
I I think if he goes down in the chat, there's like a dollar
yeah.
sign.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about while he's watching the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. So down next to the comment section, there's a dollar sign. Unless he's watching on his phone, there's a
Yeah.
dollar sign symbol. He just has to click that, and then it should pop up with a menu of items they could do, super stickers or whatever you're qualified to do.
Okay.
But that's where they do it. The other way to do it is go to the website, go to your main page, and I just got the link since we were talking. There's the link to your main page, and hit that subscribe button right in the middle, and then that they can sign up there as well.
Okay. There you go, Garrett. Garrett, you're on the phone. So Bomber said he put a link to my YouTube. You can go there, brother, and 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 become a member there. Okay, we got the NIL, which I got a love hate relationship with all of this, and I tell you the love part of it I have, Bomber, is because there's a majority of these kids who is great football players in high school, but whether they come from um, lack of funds, for better term, impoverished homes, inner cities,
Right.
single parents, you name it. I mean, all the variables. I like it for that part because it gives this young man a chance to do something for his mom or his daddy,
Uh-huh.
you know. So that's the love part of it that I love. But have you noticed that some of these players are, for lack of a better term, bag chasers?
Oh, certainly. But put yourself in a position of somebody that's either disadvantaged, like you're describing, or even
Yeah,
just a Joe
yeah.
Blow coming from a middle income, or even a rich family. At the end of the day, these players, if they're good enough, they can absolutely chase that money because there's nobody bidding against them, right? There's no counter.
Oh,
Um, until the players get unionized and have some protections, it will forever be this way because you're literally it's a seller's market, meaning the player's sitting there and is wanted by multiple entities. They can work against each other, um, and they can parlay that into a really good offer. At the same time, just going somewhere 1 year doesn't mean you're going to be there the next year. In fact, these players have turned into free agents, and now it's been quite common the last few years to go to one school, then another, right? And like
mm-hmm.
like Rashada is on his fourth school in three
Wow.
years, which is crazy. So yeah, it really is the Wild West. No rules. They're trying to institute some self controls, but who knows if that happens.
We got a $50 super chat from Chicken. He's telling
Wow,
me
that's
to
cool.
thank you, Chicken.
Very cool.
He's telling me to thump my stepson in the ear. No, he's taller than me, and I'm old.
Okay.
But the way you're describing it to me, Bomber, is in a nutshell. Until it gets unionized or have some kind of law put in place, it's going to be the wild, wild west.
Yeah, I
Is
don't see that changing. Yeah, I don't
wow.
because there's no collective bargaining. There's no controls on the players. Congress or not Congress, but the courts basically told them, players, you can transfer as many times as you want. And
Wow.
now, and now we've extended the time you can be in school. They just added a fifth year
Mm-hmm.
without a red shirt. That's outside of a red shirt year, plus medical years that you could have included. So you get
Wow.
some players like Cam Rising from Utah. If he plays this year, it'll be his 8th year trying to play
Wow.
football. So, there again, there needs to be order put around this. We really
Yeah.
need protections for the players. They need health protections codified in some sort of an agreement. At the same time, the schools need to be protected. There's
Yeah.
several things that several ways to do that, but certainly it's tough when you invest, say, $3 million in a left tackle, offensive left tackle. You get a heavy D end and a 5-star guy, and he demands $2 to $3 million, and then he doesn't like the coach, so he transfers. That's
Mm-hmm.
a heavy hit to an organization.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as far as all of this goes, I mean, I haven't heard what the final number is, but I know when the bidding war for John Mateer when he was coming to Oklahoma
Right, from Washington State.
from Wazoo,
Yep.
I heard he had like a $2 million. You know,
Yeah,
they
that
had,
sounds right.
and but it's guys like that hey, if I was a millionaire, I'd put in a cool meal.
Yeah,
But
well, and that's just it. That's why it's so important. I don't know if your administration at Oklahoma has sent out a letter, but there's been several. Ohio State sent one. I know that Oregon sent one. There have been others throughout the country sent out to all their boosters and donors, basically saying, we appreciate all the support you're currently giving. We need more. For us
mm-hmm,
to compete, we need more money. And that's pretty remarkable. It's one thing to hear that from a school like a Utah, right?
mm-hmm,
Or Texas Tech.
right,
It's something completely different to hear it from Ohio State and Oregon.
yeah,
So,
yeah, because Oregon, they got that Nike money up there. I mean,
right,
it's
they do. Yep.
now Kimberly K knows more about. She follows that part of OU. She she commented in one of Jason's chats. Kimberly, if you don't mind putting down in the comments exactly what is what is our where was we ranked like an NIL and collective and all of that. She's up and up on all of that.
Yeah, I don't. That's one thing I don't know. They change numbers change all the time. Any lists that have been published, I would say, are suspect at this point anyway, because who's reporting these numbers and why are they being reported? Because third parties and public schools may need to be reported, but you're probably not going to hear that information from like a BYU, for instance. It's a
Right.
private school, doesn't have the same open records, restrictions. So the chances you hear about third-party NIL value, while they could self-report, I don't think there's a requirement to do that.
Okay. You've opened my see. We're teaching an old dog new tricks now.
Okay.
Now, Bomber, can you explain to me, sir, if you don't mind, the collective? That's
Sure. Well, there's several collectives. A collective is basically like the boosters interior, in meaning the booster organization within the university. Collective is that same entity outside, a third party outside the university, and it's just a group of people that want to donate money. I donate to a BYU collective, but there's several types of collectives at BYU. There's a collective that's basically autographed, signed for the university. They're the official collective. And then the one I contribute to, Coug Connect, it's an independent. It still provides services to the players, but it's not dotted line connected to the university. And you can have several different types. I don't know that there's even a restriction to define what your collective is, except to say that you're giving money to the players to play at your school.
oh,
So,
I got you. I
yeah.
got you. You know, which you probably heard of all of this last year, the Caden Green fiasco that we had here at OU. Boy, that was
No, that doesn't ring a bell.
oh he was our offensive lineman, and what
Okay.
was it, early last year during before the spring game and all of that.
Okay.
Uh, one of the coaches come out, and Caden Green he was going to be a starter on the O line,
Okay.
and one of the coaches happened to drive by and seen that he had his stuff packed up, and then so the coach asked him, "Hey, what's going on here?" He said, "I'm leaving." So long story short, it was about the NIL and the bag and all of that. So
Oh,
OU
okay.
agreed to his terms,
Right.
but apparently his dad didn't. So he ended up transferring to Missouri. So you know,
Yeah, that's some of the we need legislation. We need controls put around this. It's better than this sort of, open-ended just whatever you can imagine. If I was a player, I would demand a contract and have everything defined that you expect from the player and that the player can expect from the collective and or the university.
yeah,
A contract so you don't get down the road and you end up like some of these basketball players recently who have sued their coaches or
mm-hmm,
ex-coaches in some cases to meet those NIL promises.
yeah,
And there's not a lot of controls there. So it's really, at this point, it's really up to the player or the organization to come up with something. If I was a player, I would want protections.
yeah, exactly, Bomber. That I would want protections, that would protect me, So
Right.
I agree with you. So it looks like what really needs to happen in a nutshell that probably take forever, but the basically what they need is a get unionized, so everything is in
Right.
one
Right.
bundle. Is
Collective
that
bargaining. Right. And then I think you institute at that point, then I think you do what the NFL did and you would institute some sort of a salary. That way, if you're a quarterback, you're going to get, you could be paid up to a certain number out of NIL funds, and it's not
mm-hmm,
unlimited like it is now. At the same time, it increases the base. So a backup defensive lineman would get X amount based on their starter status or kind of where they're at on the roster. So that would be my dream scenario, but who knows where we end up.
Yeah, Kimberly Kay said Oklahoma is now number 10 in NIL according to recent
That's
NCAA.
great. That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah,
so
that's really, really good.
it, Oklahoma is as a matter of fact, from what I've heard through sources and what I read, Oklahoma Joe Constiglione, the athletic director, is trying to bring in an NFL type front office. Is what I heard.
Right. Well, I mean, I imagine Oklahoma has one, but BYU has and I can't remember his title. I think it's called general manager, and
Mm-hmm.
it's strictly to control and be on top of what these players are making. And it's kind of like the salary cap guy on an NFL team,
Mm-hmm.
and try to manage those expectations so that the university knows generally what these players are making, because it's hard to make commitments if you don't know what this guy is making versus what you anticipate you'd like to pay this guy. Because what will happen is they'll get in the locker room, these two guys, and they're going to compare notes, right? And if you have two players that are relatively the same skill, but you can only start one player, the guy who's the backup is invariably going to be looking around going, do I want to be a backup, especially if I'm making 100 grand less than the guy ahead of me? If I have basically the same skill set? No, you're going to be on that team for one fall and you'll leave. You'll go somewhere else. And the best teams, as you know, are the ones that stay together 1, 2, 3 years. BYU has done this really well. The last 3 years, they've lost
Mm-hmm.
very few players to the transfer portal.
Right.
You've seen a lot of schools though have 20, 30 guys leaving at the end of each season. It's pretty hard to win year to year if you have no continuity.
Go ahead and keep talking, Bomber. I got some noise in the back.
What else do you want to? What else do you want me to say? I'm not sure. I'll keep talking. You give me a question.
Okay. So with all that said, when a recruiter goes to a kid's house to recruit him to said university, with the NIL collective and all of this, is it becoming to where you're not recruiting the brand of your university anymore? You're that they're going to be the recruit's going to be asking how much am I going to be getting paid?
I mean, there might be some of that, but in my opinion, I think you are recruiting the brand first of all. I think you're then the culture. You have to have a culture. The teams that
Yeah.
lose are the ones that lose their culture. And then last but not least, you're going to recruit their opportunity, their position, status on the team, things like this. And if you don't manage that, you're not going to do very well. And if I'm a player right now, if I'm a 4-star, let's say I'm a 4-star linebacker, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting courted by, if I'm a 4-star, probably most big brands are trying to get me. What am I looking for? Well, my background is unique, right? Your background is unique. If I'm a middle class player, I might not need the money necessarily. The money's nice, but I want to play. So I'm going to go to the place that's going to give me the best opportunity to play. If I'm a disadvantaged player and my mother is working 5 jobs and I would like to help her, I would be chasing that money wherever it was.
Yeah.
And then the playtime will either come or it doesn't. And then you see how it goes after the first year and you move on from there. But it can't be, if it's variable, you're going to have very, very hard time to keep your teams together, and your programs will be constantly in flux.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna say this from an OU standpoint.
Uh-huh.
If I had OU recruiting me, and let's say I'm a middle linebacker out of high school, I'm one of the most talked about middle linebackers in the state of Oklahoma, and I got the recruiter in my door. The first thing I'm gonna think of, not only from my father or my grandfather, is the history of OU.
Right.
and
Right.
and the legendary coaches, uh, what and the culture they bring, that would sell me. Now, not a lot of kids would be like that, Bomber. I understand that,
Right.
but me knowing OU and the talent that has come through this school since the Bud Wilkinson days, you
Right.
know,
That's a ways back, but I remember. Yep.
but but when you look at the players that has come through, Bud Wilkinson, Barry Switzer, Bob Stoops, and now hopefully Brent Venables,
Uh-huh.
that that to me, a program like OU, the OUs, the Alabamas, schools of that nature, the brand sells itself. That's what I that's what that's my way of thinking.
Well, yeah, I would wrap that all up and say it's legacy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're going for the legacy. You would love to be an Oklahoma Sooner legend, right?
Yeah.
At the
Exactly.
same time, you want to be an Oklahoma Sooner legend, but at the same time, you'd like the latest Maserati in your garage, right? So at the end of the day, Oklahoma is going to have a cap. There's only so much they can pay you,
Yeah.
or take the Maserati out of the garage and say, "I want to start tomorrow." Okay, you're going to go to a school that maybe is down a little bit. Let's say Clemson needs a linebacker because they're losing two of their top linebackers. You can go there
Mm-hmm.
and start, right? And the funny thing is, of all this, doesn't matter where you go as a freshman, you
Right.
can always move back to Oklahoma. You can
Exactly.
always make that move, and that's probably of all of this the biggest change: unlimited transfers.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have to sit out a year. There's no cost to transferring, and that unlimited transfers means that you could even go play community college for a year or two
Mm-hmm.
and come out and pick where you go and probably make a lot of money at it too.
Exactly. So, with all this in a nutshell, the NIL, the collective, and what what do you think the future of college football and college football sports, for that matter? What do you what do you think is the future of college football or college sports with all of this NIL
Right.
collective and all this? What do you think the future is, Bomber?
Um, Boy, it's tough. But I'll tell you what I hope for. I
Mm-hmm.
hope for collective bargaining. I hope
Yep.
for protections for the players. Additionally, they absolutely have to get health insurance for not just when they're in school, but after they're in school. They have catastrophic knee injuries. They should be getting their health care taken care of for a certain amount of time. On top of that, the benefits need to be clearly defined, and these players need to be able to get whatever they can through that aspect. But I think collective bargaining and a salary cap, NIL cap, if you want to call it that way, will add some structure back to what is currently a wild running wagon, as it were, in here in the Sooner land.
Yeah.
And I would say if that happens, everything else will sort of sort around that. You'll have, or now the schools have an organization and rules they can build on. The separate NIL collectives will have some amount of control that they can actually pay the players. There's a maximum they'll receive. Doesn't mean they won't break the rules and won't have those things happen. But you'll no longer
Mm-hmm.
have these $12 million signing bonuses, and it's so out of control. It's uneven, and you never know who's going to compete. BYU's NIL could be much better than a lot of these brands that we know. Even you could even say Blue Bloods, even though I wouldn't say that. But
Mm-hmm.
you could guess as a private institution, they could go crazy and start
Exactly.
writing checks and bringing teams in. And even at BYU, while that sounds great to me, I think there needs to be some organization put around it. As far as college sports in general, I think the A4 is going to continue to consolidate. You're going to have teams continue to move between conferences. And I would just tell everybody to look for 2029 through 2031, a coalescing of a bunch of different things that happening all at once. And I think that's when we're going to see the next mass movements in college football.
Bishop Frank also wants to know a little bit about revenue sharing.
So I didn't say revenue sharing, but at the beginning I mentioned the universities paying up to $20.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Each university is because of the House settlement, they were told they can spend up to $20.5 million on revenue sharing, is what it's called. And
Okay.
that revenue sharing, they can dole out however they want. There's going to be a percentage going to football, a percentage going back, a much smaller percentage going to basketball, and then everybody else. The Olympic sports will get a small portion of that.
I got you.
And each university has to decide how they're going to dole that up, and each university has to decide how much they're going to spend up to that cap. I think BYU came out and said they're not going to spend up to that much. It
Mm-hmm.
might only be 15 or 16 million. Doesn't mean they don't change their mind, but each university is going to have to make up how much they want to pay players directly. And at the flip side of that is you only have to do 15 million if you know that on the outside the third party will make up the difference. That's another way to look at that.
I think if, as far as what I see the future of college football sports with all of this, I think I'm going to piggyback off of you, Bomber. I do think that we need to get rid of the wild west to begin with. Have have a have a package, have a have something in place. You know, and you know one thing that's been bothering me, and it's not because I'm a fan of OU, but you know it's players hitting the transfer portal so many times throughout their college career
Right.
that and that has always you know that bothers me a little bit, Bomber. I'm
Yeah,
not going.
I mean, I see it. I totally understand. I am more empathetic to the students though. They have a
Mm-hmm.
very finite amount of years to do what they can to set their families up, and it's hard for me to hold them to some standard that I also wouldn't do. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to speak for you. I'm going to speak for myself. If I could get 4 jobs in a row and each one would give me a 50% raise at the end of 4 years, whether I go pro or not, I will have raised my salary up to such an extent when I go to look for another job, I can say, here's my salary history, and then
Mm-hmm.
demand a certain amount of money. There's no reason these players, these young athletes should be able to get whatever they can for as
Right.
long as they can. At the same time, I think there needs to be an evening out. There needs to be some regulation. And I see a comment in here: only small schools want a salary cap. Purple, I completely disagree. I think big schools want them as too. You know why? Because
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to. They don't want to compete against Michigan paying 12 million to an incoming 5-star quarterback. You know how I know that?
Right.
It's because Nick Saban was complaining about it for 2 years before he retired. He thinks
Mm-hmm.
he hates the idea that he was losing players to Jackson State. So I don't think it's just young or smaller schools. I think it's every school administration wants this because it just the salary escalations are even breaking the richest of the rich.
Right. And Coach Rick says I'm an advocate for a stipend.
Yeah, I mean that's another way to go, right? I mean there's so many ways you could dole out money. Let's just put some organization around it.
Yeah. Have a structure. Have an organization. Have it to where like a what do we call it? A one size fits all, pretty much.
Right.
That
Well, I'm not sure there's a perfect situation, but yeah, I get it.
no, there's not. No, there's not, Bomber. I'm
Yeah.
but so while I got you on here, what's your thought about the upcoming games this week? Got Notre Dame, Penn State, and Texas and Ohio State.
Yeah, I want to break the internet. I want Ohio State, Notre Dame.
That's who I'm wanting, and I'm not saying that because Texas is our arch rival.
That
That
is
would
going to get a crazy viewership number.
it is.
I said 25 million a couple of weeks ago. If that was the final matchup, I think it can be more than that. It is going
Yeah.
to be an insane number. So many people are going to watch that game, and look, TV broadcasters, we got to go to 16 teams. 12 isn't enough. Let's get more games. I want more football.
Yeah. I I got Ohio State. I got them 10 over Texas,
Okay.
and I've got Notre Dame 17 over Penn State.
Whoa, 17. Wow. Okay. You
I
weren't
know that's
impressed with their beatdown of Boise then.
uh huh.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, I wasn't impressed.
Okay. That's 17 points. What's the spread right now? Do you
I
know?
have no idea. I just you know, Bomber. I don't have no rhyme or reason when I pick a team other than
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
whatever number comes to the top of my head. That
Well,
and and believe me, I have been wrong several times this year.
Notre Dame and Ohio State to me look like the hottest teams. So I'm
Yeah,
going with
the
the hottest
spread right now is 1.5 Notre Dame minus
What's
one
the
and a
spread?
half.
What's the spread on the Penn? So that's the Penn State game then.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the? Do you know what the spread is on the Ohio State and Texas game?
I
Right off.
don't know. I don't
I
know.
don't know either. I ain't looked.
Yeah. One and
Which
a
did?
half. One and a
Yeah.
half is, I think that's easy money. I'm surprised. I'm surprised it's only 1.5 for Notre Dame. I'll be honest.
Yeah. And I tell you what. And what made me think 17 is the way Notre Dame manhandled Georgia.
They played well.
God.
They looked very, very good. Yep.
Yeah, it's minus five and a half for Ohio State. Bishop Frank has a question for you, Bomber.
Sure.
What's your thoughts on local versus national NIL?
Oh boy, what's my thoughts? I don't really have any thoughts about local versus national. I have thoughts on whether it's third party or university. Um, I think the third party part of it is the piece that needs some controls. The House settlement had put 20.5 on there for the universities, and I think that's great. But let's look at Colorado, right? They're the poster child for NIL.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Shadur and his brother, who's a hack, and then Travis Hunter, and they obviously maximized, right? They were going to Paris for runway week, and they were doing these other things. Those are national campaigns, and they're making millions and millions of dollars. There's crazy numbers rumored for how much they made this last year. I don't see a big difference between local and national, except to say that I think the money is much bigger if you can get a national account.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Travis Hunter did a Nerd Wallet one, and that paid him big money, and that was international. So I say if you can get it, go do it. Go get your money while you
Yeah.
can.
And Coach Ricks has a question for you. What do you think about the automatic bids in the CFP?
I'm torn. Again, I'll break down where I think we need to be. I think we need to be 16 teams. The Big 10 and the SEC get 4 bids, and the Big 12 and the ACC get between 2 and 3 bids each. But they're not auto seeded,
Mm-hmm.
so they get the teams in, but then you do a seeding 1 to 16. I think buys are broken. I know people have said the data set is small. This is only the first year, but all 4 teams losing that had buys. Arizona State should have won, but of
Mm-hmm.
all of them, all 4 of them lost, and I don't think that data lies. I think staying hot, staying active, playing that next week after the championship games, I think is important, and you want to
Yeah.
keep playing. So
Exactly.
that's where I'm at with it. Give the auto bids to the power conferences that spend the most money and that are most involved in big time college football, and then leave some access for the G6 and Notre Dame. By the way, I think the Notre Dame direct access needs to go away too. In my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, the Notre Dame spot should also be competed with the G6 spot.
Right.
So I don't think Notre Dame should get an auto buy, whether they only lose 1 or 2 games or in every year, no matter what. I think that's broken. So get rid of the buys, though. Let's get rid of the buys in all home games in the first round.
That's what I say, Bomber. That's my. Well, listen, brother. I got to get out of here and get me some dinner down my belly. I know you said you was on about 45 minutes, so
Right.
I'm going to cut it now. And Bomber, You're welcome in this podcast anytime you want to, my brother.
Yeah, you call, I'll try to respond.
All right,
I'll
brother.
be here as often as I can.
Tell the folks where they can find you at, Bomber.
Sure, just right there on my picture, you can see my nickname is Bomber, and my hashtag on Twitter. One I use most, not hashtag, but the at Big 12 Mafia is B12 Mafia, and then our College Football Mafia Network. The address is at the CFB Mafia. Got a team. We cover everything college football, not just one conference. Everything, news, realignment. We talked about NIL and everything else associated with collegiate sports. We cover all that stuff. So I'd invite everybody to follow me on Twitter, and then just turn on those notifications so you know when our shows pop up. And then go to YouTube and go to College Football Mafia Network, and you will find us there.
Sooner Legend family, go check out Bomber. I mean, y'all show me love every day. Go check out Bomber and his channel. Him and Immaculate and them guys on that channel, man, they rock it. I love their channel.
Well,
So,
thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that.
oh, hey, before we get out, how's the tongue, brother? Are we
It's
over that?
Yeah, no, it's never going away. For those that don't know, I had cancer on my tongue, lost about 5 centimeters on my tongue in September. And then they had to cut down into my neck, I guess it's here, and took out a bunch of the lymph nodes. So I had major surgery. That's what Mike's talking about. I'm doing okay. I'm having issues with my scar. I've got talk challenges sometimes and aches with my tongue, but I'm still here. So
That
you know what?
that's
You get up every day and you just do the best you can.
that's right. And Bomber, I've been praying for you every day, brother.
Oh boy, I'm not sure I'm worth all of that, but thank you very much. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
but y'all can find me, Mike the Legend, right here on YouTube at Sooner Legends Podcast. We are up to 739 subs. Little over.
Congratulations, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I've only been doing this for a little over a year, and I've hit 739. And
I think you're doing great.
thank you, Bomber. And
You betcha.
if y'all would, any of y'all would like, I'm not twisting your arm for as little as $2.99 a month. You can become a member of Sooner Legends Podcast, and that will get you into the Discord. And I'm going to start being more proactive in the Sooner Legends Podcast Discord. So y'all get out, give both channels a like if you haven't already. Subscribe to both channels. I'm sure that I will have Bomber on here during the college football season starting out for 2025. So Bomber, I appreciate you very much for jumping on today and helping me understand all of this.
Anything I can do to help, just let me know.
I sure will, Bomber. And you have a great rest of the week, guys. Y'all take care. This is Legend. We'll see you on the bad side. God bless y'all.
Peace out.
Peace out. Well, appreciate everything today, Bomber.